that we can just address that now. So some very quick housekeeping today. This webinar will be 45 minutes long today, so we'll finish up around 1:45 today, and we will stop at points to address any questions. So please note that the slides and the list of links will be sent to everyone registered for this webinar. We'll do that by the end of tomorrow, so if you can please give us 24 hours to do this. And if you haven't received these by then, please do let us know at that point by emailing us on our website that's on screen there, and one of my colleagues will pop that into chat. Thank you very much. Everyone, it's really important to remember that HCPC needs to be on your safe senders list, because we've noted that quite a lot of emails do go to junk mail and spam, unfortunately. So please do check those folders for any links or resources, and if you haven't received them, then please do get in touch with us on that email address. If for some reason you haven't received any links to previous slides and links for other sessions that you've attended, then these have gone out. So please do drop us a line or DM us on social media, and we will help you to be able to access some of that previous learning. And similarly, there'll be some questions about whether you want to review recordings of previous events. So again, get in touch with us on email or on social media, and we'll help you with that. So we've got a really large volume of attendees today, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. But you'll notice that as a result of that, we do have to automatically mute everybody, all their microphones and videos. And it's such a shame, really, because I'd love to see you and speak to you, but it's just not practical with webinars of these scales. So if you are, please use the chat function as you're already doing, which is fantastic. And if you are looking for anything more bespoke or individualised in terms of learning from the HCPC for your teams relating to any aspects of HCPC standards, then please do drop us a line on that email address that is in chat for us, and we'd be really happy to speak to you about that. This is your community today, so please do use the chat function to engage with colleagues and others, share any resources or ideas that you think might benefit other people relating to our topic today of leadership, and I will be adding those into the resource list that comes out at the end of the session. So we're going to use some online polling software today. I think my colleague popped that in chat already today, so please make sure that you've got a new browser open on your computer screen, or my individual preference actually is to have it open on my phone. The website that you will go to is www.slido.com, and you'll be using the event code HCPC lead. So that hasn't started yet, but it's quite good to get that prepared in the background. Thanks for popping that in the chat to my colleagues. So quick bit of further information, please do connect with us on Twitter at the HCPC, following that Twitter handle there. If you are tweeting today, I'd be really, really grateful. You could perhaps keep me out of the screenshots. I'm saying that more to my colleagues than anyone else, but please use the hashtag #MyHCPCStandards, which helps us find your tweets, and give us a follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and YouTube also. And also, I always say this in every single session, but please make sure you've logged into your HCPC account on our website, so the details of that are there, just making sure that your details are up to date and that we know how to get in touch with you and that you can engage with us a little bit better as well. So a quick introduction to me. My name is Fiona Campbell. I'm here as a professional liaison consultant. I cover Scotland, based in Edinburgh, and I'm reasonably recently joined the HCPC. I might have met you a couple of weeks ago in my webinar on safeguarding. So thanks to those of you if you've come along to that or any others, but also if this is your first time here, you're very, very welcome. I'm a HCPC registered myself. I'm a speech and language therapist. I'm very proud of my registration with the HCPC, and it's a great privilege to be able to bring some different perspectives to the HCPC in some of my work. I'm joined today by my colleague Matthew Clayton, Matt Clayton, who's a policy manager at the HCPC. Hello to you, Matt.
Hi everyone, I'm going to leave my camera off until I'm speaking, but my name is Matthew Clayton. I'm the policy manager at the HCPC, and I was also just one of the people who worked on our updates to the Standards of Proficiency.
Thank you so much. And also a very quick thanks. I won't ask them to put their microphones on, but a quick thanks to my colleagues who are working in the background here today. Patrick Armsby in his support role, very important role. He'll be helping also monitor chat and discussions and questions. Patrick is our professional liaison officer, and Kim Tolley, who is also a professional liaison consultant covering the large territory of England. So welcome everybody. Here's a very quick overview of the session today. So we're going to be covering kind of the why and how does leadership feature in the new Standards of Proficiency? What does leadership look like in the new Standards of Proficiency that HCPC have launched? They come into action from next September. We're going to be exploring some of the qualities, behaviours and benefits of leadership at all levels for HCPC registrants. I think you'll be able to tell from this session today that I'm quite excited to see leadership feature a little more strongly in the Standards of Proficiency. And then we're going to do some reflecting and planning on further CPD activities related to leadership, or we'll be supporting you to do that. And then we'll look a little bit about HCPC support for you. So to get started, really, what I would like to do is to get you to go onto Slido, as we've put here. The link is here. Someone was asking in chat, but here is the link for this particular online polling. And I'm really keen to find out who's in the room today. So it would be fantastic to see who's here. What professional group do you belong to? So I'll give you a few moments just to let me know. Thank you. We're getting lots of responses, so that's super. It's really helpful for us at the HCPC to see who comes along to these events and who we're maybe not reaching quite as well. So it's really, really helpful information. If you're having any trouble accessing the Slido, please do just type in chat, because that's super helpful as well. So it's no surprise really already to see, to see that some of the bigger groups, occupational therapists, are represented quite strongly today. That's been the case, I think, for all of our webinars so far. So it's lovely to see colleagues from quite a few of our groups. We've got some fellow speech and language therapists here, so that's lovely, lovely to see you all. Thank you very, very much. I'll just give you a couple more moments and then I'll grab that data and go back to the slides. Super, thank you so much. We've got OTs, biomedical scientists, art psychotherapists, wonderful. We've got a lot. We've got a lot of our hearing aid dispensers. That's wonderful. We're doing some work with hearing aid dispensers in a couple of weeks' time at one of the national conferences. So how super. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll stop that there. If you don't get a chance to take part, then just do pop in chat who you are. It's really, really helpful to know who we're getting and who we're not getting. I think it's safe to say to my team that we need to work a little bit harder at getting in touch with more of our biomedical scientists and clinical scientists, certainly for these particular webinars. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to move on to this one now and ask you this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your knowledge of what the HCPC standards say about leadership? Okay. So giving yourself a mark out of 10 for what you know about what HCPC says about leadership. Great. So we've got a lovely mix here. We've got a great mix in the room, which is always brilliant, actually. Such a great, it's so great to get that real-time kind of feel of what people say. And this is exactly as I'd expect. We've almost got a normal distribution curve there, haven't we? Of most people rating themselves round about a 5 out of 10. Well done, everyone. That's a pass. But we'll see where you are at the end and see if you know a little bit more about leadership by the end of this session. Great, everyone. You're all super at this. Thank you very, very much. I'll just stop that in the interest of moving on just now. I'm going to pass over to my colleague now, Matt Clayton in policy. Matt is the best person to be talking to you about all of these different changes to the Standards of Proficiency and leadership. So thank you very much for joining us today, Matt.
Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. So just wanted to quickly run through the Standards of Proficiency and what they are and how they work with some of our other standards. So just worth remembering that our standards of proficiency represent the foundation of our standards. So they are the base level for safe and effective practice. It's one of the things that's really important for us when we go out to approve education programs. All of our education programs, at a minimum, prepare all of their graduates to be able to meet all of the standards of proficiency at the time they graduate. So it's the minimum standards we require for safe and effective practice. It's something we work with education providers and professional bodies and trades unions to develop, and they are not a sort of aspiration of where we want professions to be or the limit to professions. They're actually the minimum of what we think is safe and effective. So when we made the recent changes, those changes reflect what we think education providers and what the practice of recent graduates shows is necessary for all of our registrants to be able to meet. So there's more information on our website under the Standards of Proficiency to talk about the new standards that are coming in and when they're coming in. But the date by which all of our registrants need to be able to meet the standards that are relevant to their scope of practice is the 1st of September 2023. Next slide, please. So when we've made our updates to these recent standards, one of the things that we were quite clear about is making a separation between our profession-specific standards and our generic standards. So the generic standards, as the name suggests, are the standards that are relevant to every one of our professions, regardless of where you are in your profession or where you practice. And so there's been 6 major themes that we made changes of when we made changes to the generic standards. Significant changes included to our equality, diversity, and inclusion standards, safeguarding, fitness to practice and mental health, technology and digital skills, leadership, which we're going to get on today, and then service user involvement. So just a tiny bit of background on some of the others. There are webinars on them. Some of them have happened already and some of them are still coming up. But with ED&I, for example, the way that we changed our standards meant that there's far more active EDI standards, changing it from an obligation to understand the importance of EDI to more sort of standards which talk about the importance of acting on EDI and dealing with unconscious bias, for example. Same thing with safeguarding and technology and digital skills. Tech and digital skills has always been important, and so is safeguarding. It's always been an important part of the standards, an important part of the legislation that many of you will work under, depending on what roles you work in and what parts of the UK you work in. And fitness to practice and mental health. So fitness to practice and mental health, that has obviously gotten a lot of attention because of the way it's changed. One of the important things to remember there is that the way that we have changed it is to understand a much more holistic way of understanding how registrants are safe and effective to practice. The one type of interpretation of our current standards, and it's a problem that we've noted for a while through research, for example, is that people interpreted the standard to mean that as soon as they were experiencing mental ill health or having any sort of problem with their physical health, they were thinking that they were not fit to practice. What this standard is trying to get across now is that that your health is obviously on a continuum, and having a bad period of health, whether that's permanent or temporary, doesn't automatically mean you're not fit to practice. So it talks about how you understand your own health, meaning you're fit to practice. And then leadership. So we've emphasized the role and importance of leadership at all of the levels of practice. And why? Because we believe the importance of registrants being autonomous professionals and in displaying leadership without needing to be in a management role. So what does this mean? There are the relevant new standards. They are all in 8.6, 7, 8, and 9. So while these standards are the specific ones referring to leadership, and the general sort of changes we've made to the standards, in all cases, we've added much more active wording to our standards. It's a much more, it's a set of standards that much more emphasizes the importance of registrants being autonomous, making their own professional judgments. It's a sort of realization that registrants are working in the field. They are the best placed to know what is the most relevant for them, where they work, and where they are in their careers. So you can see 8.6, understand the qualities, behaviors, and benefits of leadership. 8.7, recognizing that leadership is a skill all professionals can demonstrate. And 8.8 is talking about the importance of demonstrating leadership qualities with ED&I. So what's important here with leadership, and I acknowledge that leadership is a bit of a woolly term. And the reason that is that if you think back to what our standards are, they are the baseline for safe and effective practice. It's not going to be helpful for the HCPC to talk about here are the 15 different things that mean that everyone can be a leader in their own field, because there are too many registrants working in such diverse, we've got 15 different professions, 300,000 members, 300,000 registrants working in all different parts of the countries, working in completely different roles to one another. So what's going to be most important is for registrants taking that time to think about what does leadership mean in their role at the moment, and what do they want to use? How can they use leadership to shape their scope of practice and to shape their role, and how can they demonstrate it? And I think one of the most important things to get across here is to really try break down the idea that leadership is all about management and managing a team or managing a unit or a service. That leadership can be demonstrated no matter where you are in your career, but also in no matter what setting you're working in. So if you're an independent practitioner working by yourself in your own practice, you can show, you have shown leadership in a way, but also many of the decisions you make are showing your autonomy and showing your ability to lead. So it's all about thinking through how you, in your setting, in your work, and in the way you are shaping your career, how leadership impacts on you.
Matt, thank you very much. That's super helpful to hear your perspective on this. Coming in to work at the HCPC as a registrant myself, it was really interesting to get to know you and to get to talk more about how the standards develop, and how they, they've been shaped in consultation by registrants, by members of the public, employers, lots and lots of different stakeholders involved really in shaping these new standards of proficiency. And I think the key thing for me there is that message that leadership is not just about management, that we at the HCPC are making very clear statements about that it's, it's not about managing or supervising other people. It's about, having an attribute, an attribute that you need to be demonstrating, if you like, in your role. And it will mean, importantly, different things in different roles. So there's no one way to show leadership. And that's hopefully what we'll drill into just a little bit more in this session. Many thanks, Matt, for joining us with that information today. Please hang around in case there's any questions, or thank you. I'm so interested in leadership as a registrant myself. I've always been fascinated by kind of leadership and what leadership looks like in everyday practice. And if anyone's been at my previous webinars, you'll know that I'm quite a fan of reflective questions. I quite like to stop and ask myself questions or ask some questions of you for you to think about in your own time. So my questions to you really are, do you see yourself as a leader in your current role? And do you think there are any gaps in your knowledge and practice now that you've had a chance to look at what the new Standards of Proficiency say about leadership? Where are your gaps? But importantly to me, one of the last question I'm going to pose to you is, on my best day, what do I do really, really well? And I asked that for a very, very good reason, because for me, it was one of the questions that got me thinking about leadership in a lot more detail in my own clinical life. And if you wouldn't mind at the moment, if you indulge me, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and how it shaped kind of my understanding of leadership and what I'd like to bring to this particular session today. So my journey to leadership as a clinically qualified SLT was a bit of a complicated one, because I struggled really to get my head around leadership, to understand what it was. I thought it was all about ladder climbing. I thought it was all about perhaps maybe doing something better than other people were able to do it, or being good at something that people weren't good at so that I could shine. Do you know, I thought really very much it was about a way of progressing my career. And I was very, very lucky to have the benefit of some superb supervision in my career. And I always make sure I say this in anything that I do with registrants, is to make sure that if you don't have supervision in place, that you look to get that in place, because I think it's so valuable. And my supervisor asked me one day, on your best day, Fiona, what is it that you think that you do really well? And I found that a very difficult question to answer. Firstly, anyone that knows me thinks that will know that I only focus on what I don't do very well. I was very, very aware of my limitations as a speech and language therapist, but I wasn't so good at answering what was it that I was bringing to my team and to my service users that made me good. That what was it that I was doing well? I was really good, for example, at getting through like loads of patients in a day. I was really good at managing complex communication support needs and swallowing difficulties and helping people adjust to their lives. But I found it really, really hard to define the one thing, or the things that I was bringing that made me different, or that were beyond my role. And I was really lucky in my supervision, because my supervisor encouraged really brave and courageous conversations, and deeper introspection in that session really supported me to have the confidence to go off and ask my colleagues what they thought of me. What was it that they thought I was doing well? And the thought of that for me was absolutely terrifying. So from work that I did with myself, thinking about that question, what is it that I do really well in my role? When I'm having a good day, what would people look in at me and think, she's really good at that? And it really, and from that and speaking to colleagues really helped me identify that had a really unique role to play in my team. My strength was service user engagement. I happened to be particularly strong at that. I think alongside other colleagues who were also very good, I was placing a lot of value on networking and connecting with people, and people were finding me a really supportive ear to all colleagues from a range of disciplines. And it's from that conversation that I was able to have with my supervisor that I was able to see that this was actually leadership. This was something that seemed quite simple. This was something that I was, something that I was able to take forward. And for me, it was the learning that I had to sit at a point really of a bit of sometimes feeling quite uncomfortable and examining my own practice, but supporting other people, to do exactly the same really allowed us to raise important questions about how we were practicing and how we could possibly practice. Where did we think the limitations were, and how could we challenge those limitations in sometimes what felt like an immovable system of pressures and responsibilities? And I'm sure that everyone attending here today will relate to that. And I learned from that supervision about leadership, and I learned that I could harness some of these capabilities that I had, that I could enjoy work more as well, and that I could come to work as my own unique self and bring what I was good at, and in doing so help the organisation also achieve its objectives. And I think in terms of leading in complexity and uncertainty, I think we're all there at the moment. I think we have to understand that when we are leaders as well as being led by people, and that leadership sometimes doesn't always serve us perfectly and doesn't always let us develop as leaders ourselves. So I think opportunities to connect and share stories and support each other in our leadership are now much more, to me, seem much more critical than ever before, really. So from sharing that, I wanted to kind of bring you around to the idea that I want to offer out there, which is a well-known system, but there is a type of leadership that would serve us and it would work really well with what we're trying to achieve here and what we're trying to support registrants to achieve. And that's really the notion of something called collective leadership. So that we, this type of leadership, if you like, that serves us, that serves the systems that we work in, that serves our families, our patients and other members of the public. So this is really a collective leadership being about, leadership from the ground up, so that absolutely everybody is involved, if you like, in moving forward with leadership in their roles. And if we look at the 4 dimensions here that are listed on screen, so this is taken from a collective leadership strategy from Northern Ireland. It's a superb diagram, but really it's all about interdependent and collaborative systems leadership. So really what we're saying here is that there's shared commitment from everyone in that team or in that organisation to work together towards short and long-term goals. But importantly, that fundamental, that leadership is everybody's responsibility, so that we all have responsibility for this, and our organisations or employers should be thinking about putting in place conditions and support to ensure that leadership opportunities are distributed at all levels, so that everyone has a voice and everyone can drive towards achieving organisational ambitions. Importantly, this idea of shared leadership in and across teams is lovely. So this is really about how we share goals, how we share feedback and appreciation being a fundamental part of collective leadership in action. And importantly, the idea of compassion, so that we can be present, that we can listen, that we can pay attention, that we can have a shared understanding and engage with everybody. And it's interesting, in my own journey towards understanding leadership, as a speech and language therapist, you would think I'd be quite signed up to the notion of asking questions, really trying to appreciate what other people thought of me and genuine listening, but it was still very hard for me as well, even as a communication specialist, to be able to do that. So these are the dimensions, if you like, of collective leadership. Something that I think is really important are these kind of main areas here, these 5 areas that are listed on screen, is that collective leadership at its heart takes an understanding of complexity. So it appreciates that there's unpredictability in absolutely everything that we do and everything we encounter. And when we work in complex systems, and all of our registrants, I would argue, work in complex systems, we can't always see the really deep roots of complexity and some of the challenging decisions that we have to make. So the working styles and these systems are challenging for us, and we need to think about the type of leadership that works best for us. Fundamentally, collective leadership encourages practices that support self-reflection. So ways of helping you be present and show up in that system and lead with others is great. And the way I see it is that we need maps all of the time. We need new ways of navigating complicated systems. The sat-nav for our job should change all the time as we try to keep up with the rapid pace of the work that's going on around us and all the different pressures. So taking time in collective leadership is important to find that stillness and understand what it is that's going on around us, and understand a bit better about ourselves and be a little bit more present in our workplaces. Fundamental is curiosity and inquiry. So collective leadership absolutely embraces curiosity and inquiry. It's a leadership stance of genuine curiosity, asking questions, where are our opportunities for innovation and creativity? And this can be super challenging to get comfortable with. So we know, it's a sense of not knowing sometimes can be very burdensome to some of us, or to many of us, most of us. And that genuine kind of openness and curiosity of what might be possible is fundamental to collective leadership. We're asking questions, and we're also having to get comfortable with not knowing. That's absolutely vital in leadership development. And in demonstrating leadership, being comfortable asking the hard questions is sometimes something, so important. It's relational in nature, which is really important, that it's all about how we interact with humans and other humans in the system. So the power of listening isn't underestimated at all. It's absolutely clear in a collective leadership system that we are thinking very much about the quality of our listening and the characteristics of real listening that go on around us, and understanding that we have different levels of listening. I've already alluded to that some of us find it more difficult than others, and many of us aren't really that great at it. And so within that system, we'd have registrants practicing leadership who were getting comfy with real listening and real inquiry about systems that they were working in, and importantly, having that really big commitment to thinking about diverse views, drawing in different perspectives about how well our system is working. And last but not least, really getting comfortable with emergence, getting comfy to the point of realising that not knowing something is absolutely okay, that having a leadership approach that allows us to get comfy with not knowing is absolutely fundamental in a collective leadership model where we all take responsibility for leadership. So really, you'll have noticed in that there was a mention of compassionate leadership, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. We've got a quote from Michael West and some of his work that was done as part of the King's Fund work. I think my colleagues have popped these links into chat, that compassionate leadership features really strongly in a collective leadership framework where we all take responsibility for leadership. So that's about us focusing on relationships through careful listening, understanding and empathising. And what I really wanted to kind of say about that was that we have got really strong evidence, particularly coming out of the National Health Service, that where we have compassionate leadership in a collective leadership culture, that we end up with more engaged and motivated staff, we get better retention of staff, and we get better high quality care, we get higher quality care, and we get less adverse patient incidents. So I think it's really important that we understand the importance of, if you like, us all demonstrating leadership capabilities here. The question was asked of Michael West in this particular document of, well, how do compassionate leaders behave? So it talks about the fact that they empathise with their colleagues to understand the challenges that each and every one of us face, that they all are committed to supporting others and responding successfully to working challenges, and that they're focused on enabling those they lead to be effective and to thrive in their work. And that can include colleagues, so that doesn't need to be people that we manage. So that compassionate leaders, like all of us, don't have all the answers, and we don't go about telling people what to do, but they engage with people they work with to find shared solutions to problems. So I really, really love that. I'm a huge fan of compassionate leadership and where it sits. But what's really important is compassionate leadership has to be inclusive. So compassion, if you like, blurs all those boundaries between self and other, promoting belonging and trust, understanding, mutual support, and by definition, ultimately inclusion. So what we're really looking towards our registrants creating is being part of a network that actually sort of promotes inclusive, psychologically safe environments where all team members feel valued and contribute creatively and really enthusiastically to team performance. And I think it's fair to say that certainly in terms of the National Health Service, I think it's really important to say that I think sometimes it's struggled over the years to sustain sort of inclusive, people-centred cultures. And the research really that's out there by the King's Fund is really pointing to that local action in teams and departments and all aspects of organisation to create those cultures of work really begins with collective and compassionate leadership, so that we have those crucial conversations that enable us to drive our services forward. I've got some nice little quotes here. This is from one of the Welsh strategies around compassionate leadership that sort of looks at what the dimensions of compassion and collective leadership look like for staff. But the question for me here, I can just leave you to read those very, very briefly. But for me, it's about how do we get started with this? Because I am appreciating here that There will be so many of you on this call who do have experience of leadership, who have engaged in leadership learning and development, or some of you that are at the very, very beginning of that. You know, you've maybe just joined our register, you're thinking about leadership, which didn't feature as strongly on the Standards of Proficiency when you joined us, but it will as of next year. So where can I go? Where can I begin? And really importantly, a nod to our students today, because we've got students on the call today who are listening in, because they will be busy thinking, you know, these Standards of Proficiency will be out when they graduate. How can I develop leadership skills and potential? What's really good to know is that our colleagues in education are working hard behind the scenes to really be thinking about embedding leadership and teaching, if you like, around leadership in clinical placements, and practice educators will be driving that forward too. But where does it leave the rest of us who are registrants, who might be thinking about beginning a leadership journey? I think it's really fair to say that there's lots and lots of different ways that you can get started. Sometimes, I've mentioned already, I think supervision is key to this. So having the opportunity to have the conversations and have these safe conversations that can happen in your workplace. Something that I find really useful when I began to think about leadership in my own leadership journey, or the development of leadership skills, was to think about something known, and this, some of you may know this or have seen this in different contexts, but to think very much about your circle of control and your circle of concern. So it's really, this is influenced by the work of Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey. And really what we're talking about here is your circle of concern encompasses all the wide range of concerns that you might have. And that could be in your life and in your work. It could be your health, it could be your children, our families, you know, problems that are arising, if you like, at work. You know, you might be concerned about, it's quite topical, but, you know, government borrowing, or, you know, threats of war, all of these different things. But the circle of concern often is things that we don't feel or we don't really have much control over. But as we begin to move in towards our circle of control here and our circle of influence really is those things that encompass, you know, concerns that we do have, you know, that we can actually probably do something about and do have some control over. And Stephen Covey, in his work on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talks about being proactive. So being responsible for our own lives, and recommending that people focus on issues that are within their circle of influence and seek to extend that circle of influence. And down there at the circle of control, well, are all the things we've got immediate control over, you know, our actions, our thoughts, our responses, our attitudes, and our enthusiasm. But importantly, if we think about our behaviour, you know, being a function, if you like, of our decisions and not our conditions, and there's opportunity there to go about enlarging, if you like, and magnifying our circle of influence. So beginning to think, okay, so what doesn't feel like it's immediately within my control, but that I might be able to do something about, or I might, along with others, be able to exert some influence on. So having a look at the circle of concern and thinking about how it relates to you at work is really helpful, because as you begin to extend your circle of influence and think about all the different things that you might be able to be proactive and take something, you know, take some concern over, or, you know, whether it be the way in which your team is delivering a particular service, a particular culture in your particular organisation, just any aspect of that, as we begin to exercise that, it grows a little bit so that our circle of influence becomes greater and we can do more with the resources that we have. So it's all about being proactive rather than reactive, and not losing energy, if you like, on things that we can't change, but seeking out the things that we can change. And I find this really, really helpful. We'll have some links that we'll send out on the circle of concern just to get you started on that. But my really important thing that I want to acknowledge today is that there's absolutely lots of leadership sort of opportunities for learning out there, and we're going to link you to some of those today. Something that I found really helpful, and again, some of you might have heard of this, when I began to think about leadership and my own leadership, was something known as the Johari window. So this was developed from American psychologists, so that was Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham. So hence the word Johari, the sort of the combined names there. So this goes back to like 1955, I understand. So the model's used to help people get a better understanding of themselves and learn, you know, how they're seen, if you like, by other people. So it's a little bit of what I was doing when I was talking about my own leadership journey, was to really try to investigate and create some revelation about how other people saw me. And ultimately what the Johari window seeks to do is provide a bit of a feedback model to raise self-awareness, because there's lots of evidence around the development of leadership skills comes from understanding yourself a lot better. We begin our leadership journey by understanding ourselves ourselves, working out where our blind spots are, and working out where we can begin, if you like, to improve. So I think for me, this is a tool, if you like, that helps people get a better understanding of themselves. It's certainly not a new tool. It's been used a lot in leadership and is still used a lot, and really tries to support mutual understanding between individuals and in groups. So as you become safer around your colleagues, you can begin to share this with one another. So it helps you understand how other people might see you as well as encouraging you to really be reflecting on your own skills and capabilities. So it's really great for personal development. It's really good for improving communication in team members and to get us really thinking about self-awareness, which is a fundamental tenet of, if you like, of leadership in everything that we go about, you know, in anything that we look at. I wanted to begin, or rather to, actually I might stop at this point and just check in with my colleagues here to see whether we're going to have a look at resources now around leadership. And I just wonder if there's anything coming up from the chat, if my colleagues would pop their cameras or mics on and just let me know what you're distilling from the chat today, because it's been quite busy.
Fiona, lots of people helping each other out in the chat, but no major questions coming up, and we've been posting all the links for you.
Thank you so much. You're so diligent. Thank you so much. I can see that now. Great. So no questions. Let's have a little look at resources now for the last sort of 5 minutes or so of this session today. It's really exciting. I mean, to tell you a little bit about a programme called Leading to Change, which is brand new, and it's come from the Project Lift project, which ran in Scotland. So this is one of the Scottish National Leadership Development Programmes, and that's launching in October, so right now in this year. So this is a new programme. It's going to offer a whole range of different leadership development programmes. These are free of charge, so lots of opportunities for health, social care and social workers. I think one of the challenges out there is we've actually got a lot of different offerings out there already for us to think about leadership in our organisations and how we develop leadership, our own leadership skills. This one is quite exciting to tell you about, and it has a huge range of resources as well already there. But not to overlook our colleagues in Wales who've done absolutely loads of work and have a superb sort of leadership portal for Wales where they really support you to think, if you like, about your leadership pathway, you know, what is out there, what resources are out there to support you. So my encouragement really, as you'll see, is to begin really looking at the resources that you've got within, if you work in the National Health Service, looking at what resources are out there for you to access, what your own colleagues are doing to develop leadership skills, and linking in, if you like, to some of the wider resources that are out there. If you don't work in the National Health Service, my understanding is that lots and lots of these programmes are free and open for you to use. It's all about leadership for change. It's all about, you know, trying to improve services to people and individuals. So don't be put off if you don't belong in an NHS organisation. I don't work for the NHS anymore, but I can still access a lot of their leadership development work. And some of the work that's going on from NHS Leadership Academy is superb. There's great work going on from NHS Education for Scotland and their Leading to Change programme. And this is just to name, you know, a few of these out there. There's a super inspiration library by the Leadership Academy, which is well worth a look to look at some of the kind of interesting resources and stories that you can, you know, you can really sort of pull on and see how leadership, if you like, is enacted in everyday life. Everyday professional life. So to end this today, really, we'll stop and have a look at some questions today, but I want to pose the question to you again of, you know, do you see yourself as a leader in your current role? And if you don't, what could we do about that? How could you begin to think about leadership and how it relates to your role? What might the gaps in your knowledge and practice around leadership actually be? And I always come back to this question, on my best day, what do I do really well? Because for me, that was the starting point in my understanding of my own leadership journey. It was a powerful question and led to lots of work in self-awareness, which are the fundamentals of leadership, in our opinion. I've thrown in another question here. My question is, do we talk about leadership enough? My experience of that has been mixed. I've been in different posts where leadership has been, you know, more prominent, discussed collective leadership, everyone having a responsibility for leadership. I've been in posts where that wasn't discussed. So I think it's really important that we begin to have conversations about leadership, something that I think is really important is that because leadership now features in the Standards of Proficiency, I'd like registrants to feel really empowered by that there's opportunity now if you think that maybe the culture isn't quite right around leadership in your organisation, that you can raise that. You know, you have Standards of Proficiency to meet, you can use the standards to be supportive, to develop you as a leader and your leadership skills and to contribute to your organisation. And if it's not there, then you've now got, you know, a little bit of support, if you like, to go back to your employer and ask for those opportunities for you to develop and demonstrate leadership in your particular role. So it's really important, I think, to stop and have a think about some of these questions as we move forward in meeting the Standards of Proficiency for leadership for next year. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some HCPC matters at this moment in time, but if we have any questions, we will take them now. Kim, hello.
Sorry, Fiona, there's a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on how to consider evidencing leadership when preparing to get back on the register in a return to practice role? Firstly, well done wanting to come back on the register, but any thoughts about how we can evidence leadership when preparing to get back on the register?
It's a great question, and it's brilliant that we've got people and returning to practice here today. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. I think looking out for some, evidence and leadership, I think you will not be short of things that you can do to evidence that. I think some of the links that we'll send you, some of the things that we've pointed to, there's a lot of really, really reputable sort of leadership skills development kind of programs. They can be the Inspiration Library for Leadership is fantastic, with lots of different kind of ideas, and stories, if you like, about leadership, as well as self-assessment questionnaires on leadership. So I certainly think some of those links that we've got for you, and these are only the very, very beginning. This is just the beginning of these. There's so much out there. I think it would be really great to, be able to engage with some of those and keep your evidence and reflect on some of your learning as an RTP. Thank you for joining us. Any other questions, Kim?
There's one question from Matt, actually, asking that we mentioned that by the 1st of September, the new changes must be in place. So when did the new SOPs come into place, Matt? What's the sort of time schedules?
So they were published in August of this year, and there's education programs already using them in some respects, but all of the registrants need to be able to meet them insofar as they're relevant to their scope of practice by the 1st of September 2023.
So there's quite a bit of time, isn't there? There's a bit of time.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's important to say that I think that I'd be thinking that leadership is already there. I think a lot of us are already doing things that embrace leadership. We maybe aren't badging it as such. So I think there's opportunity to go away and think about that and actually think, are we evidencing it? Am I already doing it? Could I badge this differently? And can I use this, if you like, to support my leadership development? We're running a little short of time today, so we maybe have we got any further questions, Kim, that we need to address?
One more for Matt again, sorry. When do universities need to align the curriculum by to fit with the new SOPs?
So first, anyone starting a course on the 1st of September 2023, you're going to have your first year at least against the new standards. But our education programs are already working to see how they're going to meet the standards. Some of them are already able to meet them. So when we set the level for the standards of proficiency, we did it with education providers. So many of the standards are already at the level that education providers are going to easily be able to meet or soon thereafter. But the first cohorts that are going to be explicitly on the new standards are going to start the 1st of September next year.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you. If there's any questions that we haven't addressed, if we either answer them in chat or you can get in touch with us on our email address after the event, we'd be very, very happy to receive those. I'd just like. Oh, sorry.
There's just one other question, common question about the stops. So what happens if someone is currently going through the training program and haven't completed their training by September? No matter what training, no matter where you are in a course, as long as it's an approved program from the HCPC, you will be able to register upon completion of your course. You might want to, as soon as you are registered, then direct your CPD towards any sort of gaps you're able to identify. But for most people, this is not going to be a problem at all.
Thank you very much, Matt.
International applicants, if you send in an application after the 1st September 2023, you're going to have to evidence the new standards, not the current standards.
Thank you. So moving on, just to finish for today, I've got a few more things that I'll tell you. We're just bang on time now. Sorry that we haven't got a chance to get around to every single question, but you can get in touch with us if there's any problems. Please could you let me know now using Slido, same code as before, how you feel now about your understanding of what the HCPC standards are saying about leadership. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome to type in chat if you can't access Slido, but we're seeing a little bit of a shift, so that's fantastic. That's me. That's made my day. That's really important. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Okay. I'll just leave you to contribute for a few more seconds. Lovely. Thank you, everybody. I think it is exciting. I think it's great to see leadership feature much more strongly in the standards. I don't anticipate it's going to be significant in terms of huge amounts of work for registrants to do to demonstrate leadership, because leadership is important, if you like. It's there, it's in practice at the moment. We are talking about leadership, so it's not a brand new concept, but it's important, I guess, for us to think a little bit more about it and how it relates to your registration. Some other resources for you, just a quick reminder that our operating department practitioners are in the cycle of renewal at this particular moment in time, so do remember about that. You will have noticed some consultation information around a change to fees for the HCPC, so please do access some of the webinars that we have. Perhaps one of my colleagues can pop a link in chat, because we really do want to hear your voice and want to hear what you have to say about that. It is really, really important. Please remind any students that you have, if you're a student here listening, please use our student hub. We've got a lovely student hub. We'd love to see more traffic to the student hub, which I think is really vital, a really, really good source of information. So if you're a practice educator, tell your students about it. And if you're a student, then please do use it, and please register for further sessions. We've got one on service user engagement next week. I'm quite excited about a speaker that's coming along to that, so we'll do some tweets about that. Last but not least, could you please tell me what you thought of today's session? It's really important that we get this type of webinar right for you as a taster for these new standards of proficiency. So if you don't mind, my colleague will pop the link into chat for the evaluation, or you can use the QR code here just to scan and let us know what you think of the what you thought of today's session. Thank you so much, everybody. And just to get in touch with us, here are some details for you. But we really value your time. You've been a lovely audience today. We realise that this is, you're all very, very busy. So we're really, really grateful for you joining us today and giving us some of your thoughts. I think there's loads. Thank you for that lovely comment. Lots to go off and review in my own time. I think exactly. I think that's what we need to be doing, and I think it's quite exciting to do it as well. Just that opportunity to stop and reflect and think about our own leadership. So I can hang around here for just another minute if there's any other questions. But please do complete the evaluation, and we will see you again. Thank you very much, everyone.